Welcome back to Following Noah on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 154, and we are continuing through Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. We are ending part 2 and entering part 3, apparently. This week, when I made those chapter splits, I didn't know that was going to be the case. But we're ending part 2. How are you doing, Elliot?
Doing excellent. I'm still just marveling at the beauty of this book. If you did not order one of the physical copies of this book, which unfortunately I'm one of those because this is your copy that you're very generously lending, we missed out. This is something special.
You can still order them. They
Might just do that.
you can order the 4 month late versions that'll come in October to November, something like that. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited to talk about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter this week. And yeah, not much else to say out of the gate, but I'm actually really excited. I've enjoyed going through the secret project and kind of just having a completely different view at a like standalone Brandon Sanderson book. So yeah.
If you are listening on audio for us, and you're also listening on audio for the book, I'll be including some of the illustrations in our YouTube feed while we will be talking about them. So if you want to go see what we're talking about with those, you can pull up our YouTube videos to look at those. I try to include them, especially the full color ones. There's some great ones, and I try to show them off when we get to them. So let's roll intro and then talk about chapters 16, 17, and 18 of Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Do either one of you want to start off with chapter 16?
I got us. So chapter 16, we end up heading back to the noodle shop. What's the name of this noodle shop? It's the Noodle Pupil or
Yes,
something
the
like
Noodle
that.
Pupil. Yes, because
Which I don't love that
And
name,
she's
by
studying
the
how
way.
to prepare noodles. So she
It's true.
named it the Noodle Pupil.
it's a hard to say name, but turning out to be some of my favorite scenes, I think, are happening in the noodle shop. And this was a good one. We got to see a little bit more about Kane's friends, a little bit more about kind of each one of those, get to learn about their personalities. I want to get you guys' thoughts on these other characters. I did not write down all their names, but there's like 4 or 5 of them there at the table. They
There's Izzy, Makama. Um,
Tojin is
yeah,
the
Tojin is the big burly dude, and then
Which
Akane.
Which, by the way, the way they say it in the audiobook is Tojin, which
Yes,
I hate. They say Tojin. I
it's an
personally like
it's an
it's
IN. I
such a
pulled up the ebook.
okay. I I just the pronunciation just it sounds Tojin. I mean, come on.
I enjoyed meeting these characters. It felt a little bit like these characters were a little bit caricaturized, if
I,
that's a word.
I thought so too.
They they seem very exaggerated in their different quirks and nuances. And that was the first moment where it felt to me like this was a manga. And I am I'm stepping outside of my knowledge base saying that actually because I've never actually read a manga like from start to finish. But based on what I know and some of the maybe it's stereotypes associated with those. I can't really speak to it. I'm sure some of you guys listening probably can a lot more, but some of the more kind of exaggerated way of portraying things seemed to be a bit of the manga influence coming out. What did you guys think?
I think that's a good way to put it. I think internally I arrived at this same conclusion that the characters are very exaggerated, but I hadn't like put my finger on it, I guess, and really been like like made it a point, but you're very right. Especially like, I mean, I feel like we get a description of Tojin as just like absolute like meathead bodybuilder. You know, like
Yeah.
it is very, the characters are very extreme, which makes me wonder a little bit. This is, I guess, a side note about Painter, because it's kind of like his. This is like his group, isn't it? Like his
Or it
sort
was,
of
yeah.
friend group. Yeah,
His
it
old
was
group.
his friend group, because they're all very out there, and basically everything we see of Painter makes me think he is like average. Like he's just kind of
A guy,
average Joe.
right?
Yeah, yeah. You know,
I I agree with you. I came to the same conclusion. Maybe not so consciously as you did, Elliot, but when characters are presented like that, I always feel like it brings the target audience of the book down in age. I feel like this is a younger book than, for instance, Stormlight would be, or Mistborn. There's I've yet to see like a serious dark tone besides maybe the nightmare attacking the 4-year-old boy in whatever that was, chapter 7. Um, until since then, we've been shopping, and our biggest tension points have been the old teacher lady being mad at Painter and his bumbling self. So I and I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. I'm just as an observation, I think the target audience for this book is younger than the Stormlight Archive. Um, that being said, I'm really enjoying the tone of this book. I think it's a very interesting deviation from his normal Cosmere, if that's a thing, than his normal Cosmere book. So yes, reading modern stereotypes and modern items in a Brandon Sanderson book is really odd. I haven't gotten over it, and I've read Skyward, and it's a sci-fi, and I've read Mistborn Era 2, which is like a 1800s like not cyberpunk, steampunk, kind of. That's doing it a disservice, but you get the idea. But hearing soap and shampoo and horoscopes and clicks and dressing racks and in the Sanderson book is I haven't gotten over it. It's very strange.
You can just hop on the Heon bus down to the supermarket and pick up your dinner for tonight, and then stop by the noodle shop on the way home.
so in that example, are you having two dinners?
So
Pick
what-
up dinner and then on the way home stop at. Sorry, I'm being ridiculous, but I was just thinking
I'm
about
It's
it.
a
glad
takeout for later.
I'm
But
glad you
but you
caught
have,
that. I didn't
yeah,
catch that.
you make a really good point though. It's very modern. Like it is, like you can think of today almost, just like this is all also like a lot of these images that we've seen, I guess, has made me feel like this is maybe more of an urban area than I thought. In my head
Right.
it was like more quiet, slow pace, but it, like the public transportation and stuff, at least paints a picture for me of more of like a city scape,
Yeah.
like downtown cityscape.
And I think that's because in the first early chapters, Painter is out in the outskirts of the city where the nightmares are more um invasive. Like they don't go super far into the city, and they mention that. Um, so the initial thought I had of in my head is not super urban, but then when we get into scenes like this, it's quite modern, quite urban. This might turn into a side tangent, but I do want to explore it real quick. Hoyd has visited this planet in this book, right? He knows of photons and buses and Heon viewers or whatever. Does do you guys think at the time of this is going to be a Stormlight question, so um, just fair warning to any listeners. Do you guys think at the time of the Stormlight Archive, I don't think he's been here specifically, but do you think Hoyd knows of such things and just doesn't break the brains of the planet he's on and mention them, or do you think he Hoyd has recently learned of these types of things.
I think Hoyd knows about him, right? Like, I feel like he should. I mean, it could still be a timeline thing. Like, if the timeline is completely direct on every single planet, right? Then he could have not. Like, it would make sense if he hasn't seen anything like this.
I'm racking my brains, but I almost seem to recall a conversation with Hoyd similar to that, or maybe it was simpler. It was just about like light bulbs or something, where he's talking to like a Shalon or a Kaladin or somebody. He's like, it shines like a light bulb. Oh wait, I better not explain that to you, or I'll hurt you, or something like that. Somebody says something like that out of context.
I feel like that's in the Dog
I
and the Dragon, maybe.
maybe I think I'd lean towards he does know all these things, and he puts himself in character when he goes to different planets to do different things and is only going to bring up what's relevant to that situation.
I just think it's interesting that if he's attending Roshar to fight Odium and he's writing to Frost in desperation to fight Odium, would he not bring everything that he like? It begs the question of why isn't he bringing a gun to a sword fight? Um, but
Why doesn't he text Frost? I mean, it'd be
right,
way faster than sending a letter.
exactly. Um, but I'm not going to dwell on that too long because I'm fine. Like, just I could just tell myself they don't work on Roshar, and the end. Like, you could just go with that answer. So I'm not going to dwell on that too long. I did want to bring it up though, because it was brewing in my mind. But we can move on if you guys don't have anything else with that. There's a conversation in chapter 16 between Yumi and Painter that I specifically wrote down quotes for, and Yumi turns to Painter in chapter 16 and says, "I I'm sorry, we should go back to the apartment. I don't know how to be a person. This is all overwhelming." And Painter said, "Well, no, it's a good thing you came here because you need practice to be a person. You are a person." And she says, quote, "I'm not a person. I'm a concept, a thing owned by society." And I just wanted to highlight that just as not only is that what Yumi thinks of herself, that is what Yumi has been told of herself since she was a baby. And I do think we're going to thoroughly explore Yumi identifying herself as a person with values. I think that's definitely going to be explored here. But I wanted to highlight that just as the full weight of that sentence, and what that might do for Yumi, or what that might do for Yumi and Painter's relationship, of how Painter views her and what her needs are, and how she can grow, um, because of what she's been through and because of what her teacher. I can never remember her name. What is her teacher lady's name? Of what she's told Yumi
One,
over and over.
so I don't remember for
Lee
sure. Is it like
Leon?
Wanshi or Leon?
Leon.
Leon. I think that's it. I like what you're saying, Trevor, because I kind of taking the same quote but looking a different direction. Of I think in our previous episode, I don't remember when we talked about this. I think in our previous episode, Elliot maybe mentioned that some of this story might be. I might be totally off on this, but I think we mentioned that some of the story may be Yumi kind of becoming a person. Like she hasn't really been exposed to the quote real world, and like kind of a freedom of choice and like normal like socialization and all the elements that make up life. She's just done her task, right? Um, and this, I feel like this is a big flag that's saying like, yes, that is where we're headed. With Yumi.
It actually reminded me of Vin a little bit from the first Mistborn book that we just read. Much more so with Vin, but a little bit with Yumi. I get this feeling of they don't see their true self-worth. And that was a big thing for Vin through the first Mistborn. Still unsolved. I'm still on the kind of on the lookout for some more growth and some more development with Vin to be able to see her own value. But Yumi doesn't really see her own value either. She sees her value in what she provides for society, but she doesn't, like this quote, Trevor, that you picked kind of highlights, she doesn't view herself as a person. She views herself as, like she says, a concept, a like cog
A
in the
tool.
system. Yeah. Yeah. And I think she treats other people kind of like that in a way too. She's polite to others, but she doesn't really know how to interact with them super well. Like she's just constantly ordering Painter around, expecting that he's going to obey because it's the right thing to do. And while it might be the right thing to do, that's not always the way you can talk to people or interact with them or, share emotions with them or something like that. So I think you might be right on it, Paul. I think this might be the development direction for Yumi.
Painter, they go back and forth a little bit, and Painter pushes back on her and says, "No, you are a person. What you view or how you view things does matter." And Yumi said, or Yumi assumes that what the situation that they're in is, if not a punishment, then at least like a predicament. And Painter stops her and says, "Well, no. What if the reason why we're here together is a reward? What if you have performed so well that the spirits are rewarding you by being able to visit me and my planet?" And Yumi really appreciates that sentiment. That I don't think Yumi has been lauded for her efforts ever in her life, and so the concept of being rewarded for her duties is so foreign to her because she does her duties and that is the fulfillment. But Painter flipping it on its head for her really rocks her world in 16 here.
I think Painter is giving her a different perspective to look at things through. I did take that statement from him a little bit differently though. He he says maybe they sent you here as a reward. Maybe you should look at it differently. I almost took that in a little bit of a not quite sarcastic, but maybe a little bit snarky of a tone. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I almost took that as maybe mocking her a little bit
Okay.
of saying, oh, well, maybe you need to think about your spirits differently. Maybe this is all just a reward for you. I didn't take it super seriously or super prodding into who she is and all of that, but maybe he is. I still think he's the foil to her perspective for sure, regardless of how he means it. And I forgot the sarcasm font there, so I don't know whether he's serious or not.
Fair. They do have quite a few sarcastic jibes at each other through these chapters. They're beginning to be more comfortable. Yumi even jokes with Painter a couple times. Whoa. So,
Huge character development. Massive. Yumi said a joke, everyone. It was awesome.
and then
It was my
Design
standard
walks
range.
in. We get an
Yeah.
actual full conversation with Design. I'm very excited to talk about this. What'd you guys get
So
out of
kick
chapter
us off.
17? I'll let someone else start it, and then I'll go off on
Okay.
a rant.
So, I'll do my best to go through it. Correct me wherever I remember incorrectly. So they go in, and Design is there, and they're kind of trying to ask Design all the questions to fix their problems. I believe they're like, what do we do? Because Design can also see Painter,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And she mentions like I think she mentions like cognitive shadow, right? Does she like drop that or like imply it?
She assumed her first assumption, which I think is really funny. And I should have seen this coming. That Design would be a key forward here, but her first assumption is that he's dead, which has
That's
interesting
right.
implications. She comes around the corner from the back of the kitchen with noodles, like with a bowl of noodles in her hands, and says, "Nakara, what happened to you? Did you die?" And they're like, "I don't think so. We're just swapped and we need help." And so Design goes off on random like tangents, and she drops a bunch of one-liners that neither of them have any idea what she's talking about. But she's talking about like the Cosmere and realmatic theory as if they're common like understood things, and so there are a few, I don't know, token things in here that are pretty fun, but they have no idea what she's talking about. The reader, I think, knows more of what's going on here than any of the three of them, I think.
I think you're right. It is neat to see though, and I don't know if there's much I can take away from it, but she's with her saying that Nikaro is dead, or like worrying that Nikaro is dead. It like kind of goes into this whole like he would be a cognitive shadow if he were dead and he were there, right? He would be a cognitive shadow. Um, which like my understanding is that he like has a level of investiture. I don't know if that's from Yumi. I feel like we've seen that. I feel like you can just like tell naturally that Yumi has investiture going on because she's very like special in her world, right? She's this whole like chosen one kind of trope. Um, I feel like we don't see as much with Nikaro. However, we've kind of had this hint that he has this like moment in his past, so it could easily be like a covered up kind of thing. Like he, uh, I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole, but long story short, our characters here like definitely have some investiture going on, if that wasn't already inherently clear. Like this was kind of like the a moment to just like really spell it out, I guess. Um, but yeah, we get some fun dialogue of talking about the mix between art and stacking, right? And how it's a combination of like artisticness and math and all this stuff. Um, but yeah, what else did Joe really take away from Designs talk?
I thought it was great actually that we got someone to start explaining some stuff to us. We talked about last episode. I think it was last episode. When is the when is the Gandalf figure going to come and explain the quest that needs to happen? And we didn't I don't think we quite got that. We didn't get the whole thing, but we at least got the like wise knows a lot of stuff person in design, which completely agree with what you wrote in the outline, Trevor. Should have been able to see this coming. I did a little face palm moment as soon as design saw painter. It was, oh, duh. Design is exactly who we should have gone to talk to help figure all this out. Of course, she's going to know about all of this stuff, or at least some of this stuff. So it was good to get some answers for sure. Probably the biggest one that I noted down was design explains that it is not Yumi's body, but that it is still Painter's body in on Painter's planet,
Yeah.
which rather confused me at first, but I think it makes sense after I stared at it for a little bit. Her explanation was just what did she say? She says that Yumi is highly invested, and therefore her highly investedness morphs Painter's body to look like hers.
So
At that point, of course, Painter starts freaking out about, well, hang on a second, do I get my body back later? Which I thought was pretty funny.
so I'll spell that out a little bit more, and here's my theory. I don't know if this is too far fetched of a theory, but just a little bit more explained. I think because Yumi is so well practiced with manipulating spirits into objects and manipulating things on the cognitive realm, that when she jumps over to Nikaro's planet, her perception of herself as herself morphs his body to herself. and Nikaro doesn't have that manipulation of investiture. So even though he still views himself, he hasn't convinced Yumi's body to become Nikaro's body. The stick is still a stick. It's not fire. But Yumi's perception of herself is so strong, and her manipulation of investiture is so strong that it just automorphs to her, like the soul, the bead in the cognitive realm just alters to her, because she's so well invested. Am I confusing you more, or is that the help at all?
I'm following. However, if you are joining our podcast and having casually picked up this book, then I'm sure what you heard made less than 0 cents. And all I have to say is, don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it.
I
If that's the
did use a
case.
couple Roshar metaphors there, and I apologize in case you didn't get them, but you will eventually.
I do think what you just said there actually adds something to the explanation I got out of the book that does help, and that's the perception side of it.
Yeah.
She's very well trained in that convincing and perception side of things because she has to like tell the spirits what to become and be a very clear, mental picture of what that is. She's very well disciplined. It would make perfect sense. She goes into another world. She thinks that she's her, and so she is. But I'm not sure I got that from the text because here's what design says, which seems to go in a completely different direction. Design says you've got a storming strong spiritual aspect, highly invested in some strange way. What does that mean?
I took it as can affect investiture very easily and very well. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what Shalon's doing as well. She's just untrained at it. Right?
Separate from like Yumi literally being carrying investiture inside of her.
I don't understand the question.
I read it as you've got a storming strong spiritual aspect, highly invested in some strange way, as in she's more full of an investiture than a normal person. Is that different from what you're saying, or is that the same
Like
thing?
she has more breaths, right? Like, is that
Yeah,
kind of a way to describe it? Like she's a high heightening, I guess.
exactly.
I guess. Yeah. I'm
Or
tracking.
maybe it's both. All the above.
It might be both.
She's she's imbued with more investiture. Breaths is a really good way to think about it. I didn't think about that. She's at a certain much higher heightening than Painter is, and she has a very well trained mind and can perceive herself and manipulate the investiture way more than Painter can. Therefore, the body looks like her because she's just so powerful in that way.
Okay. More random theory time. Um, so let's take Yumi's planet for a second. Where's the investiture?
Uh,
Besides the spirits, I can't think of any.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the spirits, right?
Right. But, and we'll get into it here in a second. Design has just confirmed for us that on Painter's planet, there's just investiture everywhere. The shroud
It's the shroud.
is
Yeah.
investiture. The Heon lines are probably investiture.
yeah.
But on Yumi's planet, I don't think I know if there is investiture on the planet besides the spren that are running around, and I'll use that term loosely.
Do you think it has any? I've had the very slight thought for a while that it's like almost the planet itself, like the heat, like everything is so hot and stuff. I know we're doing this whole like, oh, one planet's hot, one planet's cold, right? But like, could it have anything to do with these like, I don't know, our ritual bathings that we're 3 for 3 on now with the last like several episodes,
I
or like just like the heat of the planet itself?
and until you said that, I didn't think of any of this. I didn't think anything of this line, but design or Yumi asked design. heat comes from the planet. Is that normal? And design says, no, that's not normal. So I wonder. Interesting. I wonder if there's, yeah, if investiture is heat from the floor, and maybe that's why part of the reason why Yumi feels so out of sorts without the heat from the floor, because she's not absorbing investiture at the rate that she normally does, and like she doesn't know that.
What if I actually have a different theory on this later, but we'll get to that. What if the water on her planet is the investiture? Do you remember when they were doing the ritual bathing? Spirit Yumi interacted with the water
Yeah.
and nothing else. Maybe the
That's
ritual
a really good
bathing
point.
is just a ritual to them, but is maybe somehow empowering Yumi with investiture and is contributing to her artistic abilities.
And Spirit Painter interacts with the Heon line,
Yep.
the Heon viewer in this episode, doesn't he?
Yep.
He like turns it on or turns it off or something, and both of them like kind of stop and like, that was weird. Why could I do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting things to kind of think about as we go forward. Kind of like, like that. I I could very easily believe that as we like read on or even reread with that thought, that maybe we would see more connections or
Mhm.
things like that. So
While we're talking about investiture, design makes an interesting comment. And this is another, I think, classic Brandon Sanderson, blink and you miss it. If you're not paying close attention, you're like, oh, yeah, okay. And then you read on. She's talking about the planet. She's talking about the investiture, and she specifically is talking about the shroud that covers the entire planet. And she calls it a miasma of raw investiture. Stormlight spoilers heading your way. Apologies for all of the people who have not read Stormlight. But go do that because we're going to reference that a lot throughout this book. This is I actually stopped on this and the gears in my head started turning a little bit on this. It seems like a semi-obvious thing, but what actually caught me is in Stormlight on Roshar. At least I've been wrestling a little bit with is everything that we're seeing over on Roshar all investiture, or is there something else? Is there like an anti-investiture? Is there a dark investiture that balances a light investiture? For example, what's his name? Nightblood, the sword.
mm-hmm.
He exhibits this incredibly dark, rather shroud-like magic. The theory where we've been trying to decide, like, is that investiture, or does investiture have to be light or something else, or can it be darkness? For design to specifically reference the shroud, which is like the darkest of darkness, and specifically call it investiture, the more I thought about it, more it feels like a bit of an answer for me that all of that stuff is investiture. We can have stormlight, we can have void light, we can have whatever the heck Nightblood is dripping with, and we can have this massive cloud on this planet. We don't even have a name. Do we have a name for this planet? We don't even have a name for this planet, do we? Painter's planet?
Unfortunately, no. So during the live stream, somebody asked him that. What is the name of the system? What are the name of the planets? And Brandon Sanderson said, "Am I allowed to say that?" And he turned it over to his continuity editor, and continuity editor's like, "No, no, 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 no." So we almost got it. He almost answered it, but then he caught himself. So
Anyway, all of this stuff has if she's calling this investiture, I'm now ready to kind of apply that to everything and stop my hunt for an anti-investiture. Maybe it's a lot too far of a step to go off of 3 words in a book, but maybe.
Yeah, that's fair. I am still final note to that, or my response to that. I kind of still think Nightblood is anti-investiture. I know it's a totally different thing. I don't know if we've seen him interact with Voidlight or whatnot, but I'd be curious to see him interact with other forms of investiture because all we've seen is him consume it, and it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like a very like the other forms of investiture don't really like interact that way, right? They don't like consume each like. There's no. I mean, that doesn't mean that
Well,
they would all do
you can
that,
create
right? But
you
yeah,
can create an atom bomb with it, but yes.
yeah. Anyways, all that to say,
I do want to chime in on this. I'm gonna set Nightblood aside for a second because I think Nightblood has an interesting characteristic in consuming investiture that we need to set aside for a second. What I think is a more apt and maybe an easier demonstration to make is Midnight Essence. Midnight Essence is like negative light weaving, but it's still investiture, right? Like it's like if light weaving had a bad day and created 6 heads and 4 arms and like is obviously trying to be something but failing at it. I do think that is still investiture, simply corrupted investiture with a capital C. And what that we could go into we could turn this back into a Stormlight episode and talk about corrupted investiture versus normal investiture, which is not anti-investiture. So there's a whole path that we need to go down at some point before Stormlight 5 comes out, I think. Now is probably not the time. That being said, I do think black investiture is either A, corrupted, or B, anti-investiture. It has to be one of those two. The colors are very deliberate in so it's actually an important distinction of whether the shroud is black or like a midnight blue, because that's going to be really important for how it interacts with other investiture. I'd be willing to bet, because design called it investiture just period, that it's actually dark blue, more the color of the book that you are holding, Elliot.
I did actually complain when you handed this book to me that it was not black. I I thought from a design perspective that it should have been like a black or a dark gray and could be reminiscent of the shroud, but that's an interesting thought. Maybe it's dark blue on purpose.
Just as a side note, I really appreciate that we have a full scene with design speaking fluent Cosmere to me. Like I greatly appreciated some scraps of answers, even though they're fully filtered through a Spren who's very distracted. But this type of scene is I feast upon as a Cosmere theorist. So thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it. Anything else for 17, gentlemen? One quick thing at the end of 17 here. Yumi and Painter turn to each other and say, "We need to get back to my planet and perform the rituals and practice." But and Painter says, or somebody says, "Yeah, we need to get you back to your own life." And Yumi admits in an internal dialogue that she doesn't want to get back to her own life. And I think that's going to be fairly important moving forward. Yumi finally admits to herself that were she to have a choice, she would not choose to go back. And Painter's planet has intoxicated her to a free choice lifestyle that she has not missed until this point, but now that she's seen it, she will miss. So, Elliot, is there's an art piece of the noodle shop, right, in the book?
Yeah, there is.
I'll go ahead and show it on screen now. What do you guys see in this piece?
I first off noticed and enjoyed the depiction of Hoyd as a coat rack because
Yes.
as as humorous as that concept is, I was having a little bit of a hard time picturing that. Like, does he just have his like fingers sticking out so that you can hang coats on his fingers? And yeah, that this helped a lot to kind of depict that for me as these little prongs on him. I love the prongs around his head like a crown. He's got like a
Yeah.
crown of coat rack hooks on it. Like it's fantastic.
For whatever reason, I was envisioning him gold, but he's not gold. Did they? Why was I envisioning gold?
They mentioned like copper or bronze specifically. That I think it mentioned specifically design like spray painting him copper
Okay,
to make him look like a statue and how bothered he was by that.
gotcha.
But all these art pieces in the entire book, both these ones and the kind of more color ones, all seem to have just varying shades of blue and pink.
That is interesting. What I honestly noticed, and this, I'm probably noticing this late because I've been listening to the audiobook, where I will say the audiobook, at the end of these chapters, it has like a illustration description and it describes the image to you.
Yep.
But I feel like we were told that Yumi in Painter's World was going to look like really, really out of place. Maybe that was because of the clothing, but just like looking at the picture and how like similar they appear, I'm like, why would anyone think she seems like an alien or out of place,
Right.
But maybe I missed something with that, but and maybe it was clothing because she has her like Yokihijo spiritual garb or whatever, It's very different.
At,
But
at the beginning of 16, Painter remarks to himself that when she's wearing normal clothes, that she looks like anybody else and she could fit in here. So
okay, I definitely missed that line.
I think it's interesting that everybody, all the painters on the back table, they all have blue hair.
I was noticing that too.
Yumi and Nikaro have black, Design has white, but all the painters in the back have blue hair.
Yeah. So, do y'all know who is who in that picture? I can tell who Tojin is because he's flexing his muscles, but aside from that, I don't
I
know
assume
exactly if I can
Akane is
tell.
closest to us.
Okay.
On our side of the table here, and then Izzy and Makama, I don't remember her name.
Is it? Yeah, I don't remember either. Is Makon? Let's say Makana. I'm just gonna go with that confidently. I'm probably wrong. Should be the one in the corner, right?
Yeah, she's looking at a horoscope. Or who's the
Yeah.
horoscope girl?
Izzy is the horoscope girl, and Makama's the emo kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I see. I guess it makes sense that Izzy would be in the middle.
No,
I
yeah,
think.
Makama is drawing her little bunny picture that she's about to give to Yumi right in the picture.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I was curious. I was just trying to get the imagery straight.
I just feel like what's on the back of Design's robe here? There's like a
I was trying to look at that.
a flower or something?
I can't tell. It does look like a flower or a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah.
And I can't really tell anything past that.
I'm gonna zoom in.
I didn't notice that at all.
Yeah, it just looks like a, I don't know, traditional Asian floral thing. I don't know if there's any hidden gems in here or not. Yeah, anyway. Anything else for chapter 18, gentlemen?
You mean 17?
Nope.
18 as well? Let's see. Bathing scene, we already talked about that. The only other thing I had for chapter 18, and kind of all these chapters really, I'm really noticing that Yumi does bully Painter around quite a bit. Like, to the point where I'm kind of feeling sorry for Painter because, like, on her planet, Yumi keeps saying, my planet, my rules, and makes him do whatever she says. But then over on Painter's planet, she still bullies him around even there. And she will do stuff like, yeah, but I want to go out to dinner, so sorry, not going to listen to you. Bye. And
they've made the
has
they've made the rules of my planet, my rules but Yumi doesn't follow them on Nakaro's planet. So on both planets, it's Yumi's rules.
Yeah, exactly. It is Yumi's rules all the time. She is in charge, very bossy at times. Although Yumi's a very interesting character because she's also incredibly naive and vulnerable
Yeah.
at other times. And so there's this interesting switch kind of back and forth there. But man, she bossy.
And the times that she chooses to like make a decision and go with something, and the times that she chooses to halt and falter herself, is not always the times that you would expect. Like, she, at the beginning, she's just trying to please the spirits and everything, but now she'll go out to Noodles with the gang, and because she wants to, and then she'll also then, you know, debate in her head on whether this little thing was correct or not. So it's really interesting, especially when we're inside Yumi's head, on the decisions she makes and then the decisions she reconsiders. So yes, I also noticed that.
Yeah, not a massive thing, but just kind of an interesting, consistent thing we're starting to see from Yumi. Consistent inconsistency.
And to close up here, we did finally get a line that I was expecting from Painter for a while when he's stacking some stuff in chapter 18. He says, "This is so stupid." Like, he just straight up says to Yumi and to, like, I think his attendants are right next to him as well. He just flat out says, "The stacking is stupid," and I thought that was really funny.
Lowly. The stacking is stupid. Lowly.
Yes. All right. Anything else for 154, gentlemen?
Nada.
All right. Let's keep reading and reconvene next week. Thanks for joining me, Elliot, and Paul.
Bye.